On today's show, the Senators continue with housekeeping, signing a minor league extension, and oh yeah, the head coach of the Belleville Sens is back.
And we continue with our 2024 NHL Draft Prospect Profiles. And Ross, I got another 5-star guy coming up here. Let's go.
Rack 'em up and more on today's edition of Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. I'm Ross Levitan, out on the outskirts of enemy territory, while Brandon Pillar's up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can also follow the show on Twitter. We're at Sens Central. You can find the show on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Monday, June 17th, and Pilsy, David Bell is back, and this time he signed to the new regime on a contract extension. That's got to feel good for a guy who had to be feeling like he was in limbo when he kept hearing names like John Gruden and replacements that the regime knows. Well, we know that David Bell did a great job and deserves that 2-year deal.
Hey, you can't spell Belleville without Bell. So David Bell belongs there. And I mean, yeah, we've had him on the show a couple times. Great guy. He seems like a guy that the players really love, a player's coach, but still has that stern kind of discipline about him that he can get a lot out of these players. And look, Belleville was a team that had intentions of making playoff pushes. They've bolstered lineups before. Ultimately, the roster never was good enough to make that push. David Bell has to work with what he's got. There was lots of injuries in Ottawa that caused call-ups. Even in the crease, that was tough for him. And he was able to steer this ship to their most successful season ever, getting to the second round of the playoffs, where ultimately a really good Cleveland Monsters team bounced them. So great season for Bellsy, and I think he showed that he's earned not just a simple 1-year re-up, let's see how things go, but a little bit more security is definitely a good spot for him.
David Bell joined the B-Sens bench in 2019, so the organization was only around for 2 years before David Bell, who's an Ontario guy and was promoted in that strange circumstance that still no light has been shed on why Troy Mann was let go in early February of 2023. So he had the interim tag, did well enough to finish that season that he's now the full-time head coach for Belleville, and then last year got them to their first playoff game and was able to win that series over the Toronto Marlies and John Gruden, who is the head coach of the Marlies. So I think he did more than enough. You talk to any player on that team in private, off the record, they'll tell you that every guy in that locker room will go the extra mile to play for Dave Bell. So congratulations to him, and congratulations to one of his Swiss Army knives. Cole Reinhardt is back. The pending RFA signs a 1-year ticket. I believe it's $90,000 in the AHL on a minor, I should say a league minimum contract at the National Hockey League. Reinhardt only has one NHL game under his belt. It went unfortunate circumstances where he took a penalty. They scored the game winner on that, but that was an emergency recall situation. He's been a dependable player down in Belleville. And to me, Pilsy, this is, again, just getting your ducks in a row. Getting your ducks in a row as we head into what will be a much busier time of player movement. You have to know how deep you are at each position on each team, your NHL and AHL roster.
And I feel like Cole Reinhardt's one of those guys that you want to keep around as, I don't know the right word to say it, but like a shepherd of that team where
he's a farm guy. We know his draft day story.
True. But he's a guy that Bellsy can tell other younger players and like, look at how Cole Reinhardt approaches the game. Look at how shift in, shift out. He's responsible two-way, still puts up some points offensively, but plays the game the right way. I feel like you want one of those homegrown guys that you can have as an example for the new crop of players coming in here. So I'm really happy to see Cole Reinhardt back at it with the Belleville Sens.
Second in franchise history in games played with 225. That is 15 behind Igor Sokolov. Still no word on what's next for Igor, but of course, he's paid his dues 4 seasons in Belleville, so we'll see what happens. I almost figured, like, you look, the 200 game club, Lassie Thompson to Europe. Igor, we expect to get a new opportunity either in the NHL at a camp or going to the KHL. And if that's the case, it's like, it makes sense though. It's such a grind in the AHL that if you don't feel like you're getting your feet moving in an organization, it might be best to see what opportunities are out there. And that's no disrespect to either the player or the team. Sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time to catch lightning in a bottle. So we'll see what happens next for Belleville. But I do know that when you're looking at this from a standpoint of development, Cole Reinhardt's been an organizational player for a number of years. And look, Billsy, Troy Mann told us this, I believe, that it's the second season that's the toughest to coach these AHL players because they're wondering, where's the call-ups? Where's the call-ups? Cole Reinhardt didn't get a single call-up last year, but still gave it all night in, night out. So welcome back, Cole Reinhardt, whose next AHL point will be the 100th of his professional hockey career. Bellsy, the rumor mill continues to churn. Nothing of substance, but right now it's still wait and see, with the Senators being linked to every single goalie and pretty much every player that's name comes out on the market, whether it's trade or pending free agents.
Although, Ross, something a little different happened over the weekend is the Senators were linked to a team rather than a type of player or a specific player. And we've heard a lot about this, Ross. I'm forgetting who on Twitter mentioned it. Maybe you're looking that up right now to give them proper credit. But there was links to the Sens and the Philadelphia Flyers as possible trade targets here. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Philly has a lot of assets. If you look on Cap Friendly, which do that, you only have 2 weeks left to do it. Philly needs to get rid of some cap space here, so they'll be looking to make a deal when it comes to the draft, I think. So I think there's where there's smoke, there's fire. So keep an eye on Sens and Philly.
They were a team that was interested in Shane Pinto, which we hope is a 0.0% chance, but they were also linked to Mathieu Joseph last year, but that was, of course, when the shoe was on the other foot, where the Sens were going to have to pay an asset to get him off the books. We think those days are behind him, especially with a year less on his contract. It doesn't have that burden of what if it doesn't work out.
And a good season behind him, or at least a better one.
Good first half, but you look at the points at the end of the season, they're okay. They've also been linked to Jacob Chychrun. So there are plenty of balls in play, but you know what's great, Pillsy? They're in our hot spot. Go check out our episode last week. If we're going to trade down, we marked 14 as the lowest you can go. So if you are going to make a big trade with NHL players going both ways, I wonder what extra value you could get potentially if you do pick swap and trade 12 for 7. That could be a path they decide to go down. But when I look at the Flyers prospect pool and their NHL roster, if they're going to try to get a Scott Laughton or a Travis Konechny who's due for a raise from the $6 million that he's making, that's obviously, again, kicking the problem down the road. That would probably be a Pierre Dorion move where it's like 1 year left, 67 guy, we could fix him. Local ties. Hasn't worked. He struck out with Jacob Chychrun. We feel like at this point didn't work out as well as anyone would have hoped. And then no local ties. And that's probably what did him in on the Alex DeBrincat one. He never really wanted to be here, if we're putting it nicely. But Philsy, to me, Travis Konechny would be a fun player to target. He would be that 28-year-old to 30-year-old, that veteran, but not on the back nine type player. But you're going to have to pay, and you're probably going to have to shed a bunch of salary to fit him in. However, you look at prospects too. If that's all that you can get in this type of trade, sure, you're going to have to make other moves. But like from the 2 London Knights, Denver Berkey or Oliver Bonk, obviously,
Bonk.
They've got a ton of pieces that would be of interest, I think, to any team in a trade. And obviously, Michkov's not going anywhere. There's guys who are just locked in there. Owen Tippett just signed a huge contract, but they are an interesting. And how about the way that the season ended for Sean Couturier? Could he be a guy who has a lot of term left? And we know Dave Poulin's connections with the Flyers runs deep. He was a captain of that team, so he's in management now. Curious.
It doesn't sound like Torts is going anywhere. So if those two have a tough relationship, they're going to have to figure something out between Couturier and Torts.
Couturier. I was like, Pooley and Torts don't get along?
No.
How can you not like Pooley?
Yeah, and they probably worked together on TSN when Torts was shortly
he loved
there.
that job.
Ross, I'll peel the layer back even further on the Sens Philly trade. Maybe we could see a situation. Don't forget, the Philadelphia Flyers still have the Florida Panthers first round pick from what trade was that? I'm trying to remember.
Claude Giroux.
Now we don't know whether that's going to be 31 or 32 at the time of this recording, but we could see maybe a trade down from 25 to that pick as well, right?
Wow.
So, well, because let's say the draft starts going and teams are seeing their boards and not liking how things have shaped up or see their guy available, then maybe later on you get that late first round trade back. That could be interesting too.
We are in interesting mode. The calm before the storm, if you will, in the National Hockey League. The Stanley Cup final is 3-1 for the Florida Panthers, but Edmonton with an emphatic 8-1 win. They get
Too bad
the
it's not on aggregate, eh?
No, then the Oilers would be right back in the mix. Hilarious as the Euros are going on. Pilsy, soccer head, seam head guy over there. Pilsy, we've got two prospects coming up who are legit options at 7. One might be off the board in the top 5. The other, if he was 2 inches taller, might be a top 3 pick in this draft. The talent is wild. Can't wait to break them down. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Policy Genius. You guys already know Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. You want to save time, you want to save money, of course, and you also want to provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Because with Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and can avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius is going to help you compare all your options from the top companies with their team of licensed experts. That it's going to make it easy for you to compare quotes from all the top insurers in the country. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's need. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So don't get left without a safety net. Have Policy's Genius team guide you through. And don't just take our word for it. There's thousands of 5-star reviews on Google. So check life insurance off your to-do list with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. Go visit the GLEBE Central Pub right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street, where the vibes are free at the GCP. Enjoy a cozy atmosphere, great service, and delicious food in a place that you can enjoy your way. With friends, colleagues, or families, everybody's welcome, and they're open until 2 a.m. every day. They've always got live events going on at the GLEBE Central Pub. My favorite part is the live music every Saturday night. You just know you're going to get live music. Upcoming on June 29th, it's going to be Logan Brown. No, not that Logan Brown, but Logan Brown can absolutely shred. He's going to be performing live at the GLEBE Central Pub. Tuesday trivia every week at the GLEBE Central Pub. Movie nights every Tuesday and Sunday night. Showtime airs at 10:30. They always love having the good vibes at the GLEBE Central Pub. They've got all the screens on the NHL Stanley Cup Finals with sound, so you can go check that out. And you can get an early reservation. September 28th is the GLEBE Central Pub annual charity golf tournament. So get your teams entered, GLEBE Central Pub, and go visit them at 779 Bank Street, right in the heart of the Glebe. Great food, awesome drinks, the atmosphere to match. The vibes are free at the GCP, so go visit them at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pilsy. A reminder to everyone, you can follow the show on Twitter. We're at Sens Central, and we're on Instagram, lockedon.senators. All of our draft rankings will be individually available on YouTube. Just go check us out, Locked On Senators. All right, coming in at number 9 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, a player that the more I watch, the higher on him I get. It's Berkly Catton of the Spokane Chiefs.
Ross, Berkly Catton is such an exciting player to watch. I mean, the way he's able to deceive defenders and slice through the neutral zone into the offensive zone with ease is one of the most impressive attributes that he has, and he does it pretty much better than anyone in this draft. And that's saying something. We've covered a couple players in our recent profiles that have similar skills, but no one does it like Berkly Catton, in my opinion. With the Spokane Chiefs in 68 games, 54 goals, 62 assists, good for 116 points in the playoffs. He had 4 assists in 4 games. The Chiefs, not the strongest team in the WHL, but Berkly Catton, he was able to make hay while the sun was shining, because he was able to still put up monster points despite being on a weaker team.
Monster points to the tune of 116 in 68 games. This guy is a machine off the rush, is what you notice first and foremost. The way that he can either pick corners or dangle or pass and find the open man. There's a reason he was 4th in the WHL in scoring, the only in the top 4 without an NHL affiliation. This guy is a monster offensively, and I think it's translatable skill too that we're going to see dominate the NHL for years to come as an exciting highlight reel driven type player. Chris Peters has him at 5 on his list, Corey Pronman at 6, McKean's at 7, EP at 8, Wheeler at 8, Bob McKenzie at 11, and Craig Button at 14. A lot of what I'm reading about Berkly Catton, who stands 5'10", 175 pounds, and is a January birthday, a left shot centerman who might be a left winger at the NHL level, but if he can stick at center, the value skyrockets. If he was 6'4", Pilsy, we'd be talking about him with Caden Lidstrom, that part of the draft, because everything that I'm reading again, Caden Lidstrom, Berkly Catton, they're both Western kids. They grew up playing together, and at every level, Berkly Catton outscored Caden Lidstrom. So yeah, there's the projectability of being 6'3" and more likely to stick at center. But if you have seen year after year after year, these two players go head to head, and if one is always ahead of the other, I just don't understand that now we're drafting them all of a sudden. And it's not just a 1 to 2 gap. Like some people have a 5, 6, 7 player gap in between these. I just don't see it. And I think that Berkly Catton has been undervalued here. Now, as I pull up my rankings, I think that he's right. He's basically right here, but that I think is more of a testament to how good the players are in front of him. It's amazing to me what talent is at the top of this draft. If you're the Calgary Flames, who just not a mock draft, but they're drafting 9th, you're laughing if you get a player of this talent.
Oh, absolutely. Ross and EP's draft guide in their scout chatter, I always try to pick one quote that rings most true to me. One scout said, "He's the complete package in a sub 6-foot body, excelled on a weak Spokane team, and oozes character." Like, if that number on his height had a 6 instead of a 5, Ross, you mentioned 6'4", I bet even if he was 6'1", teams would have him way higher in their rankings, because with the way he's able to maneuver into the offensive zone, if you added a little bit more height on him to give him a bit more range and a little bit of more weight to allow him to play a more physical game off the puck, and when he gets stuck in the corners or in a one-on-one puck battle, which right now is probably his biggest weakness, is he doesn't have that size and that physical game to really battle like that. You're looking at such a attractive prospect. But regardless, he's not 6 feet, so we shouldn't talk or dream about what it would be like if he was. At 5'10", he's still incredible. And who knows, maybe he gets to 6 feet. He's not that far off. He's still got room to grow. But at 5'10", David St. Louis from EP, the examples he shows, and this is something that I really noticed once David mentioned it, is he holds the puck close to his hip. Like a lot of the time, you standard hockey player, you're going to have the puck out in front of you. Catton holds it close to his hip so that he's able to draw not just one defender, but sometimes the whole group of defenders collapse toward him because he draws that puck in close. And then they think, okay, he doesn't have a lot of room to maneuver. Let's all get a stick in there and he's going to have nowhere to go. He'll just toe drag and sidestep. And then with that straight line speed he has, he was doing that move over and over. Like David St. Louis called it, here's his move. And then he would show him do that and then get a shot off at the faceoff dot time and time again. Like his ability to do that is just so incredible. He's a deceptive player. There's so many things that EP likes about him. They awarded him 3rd best transition forward, 4th best hands, and 4th best straight line skater, and 5th best offensive forward. So whether you think he's just a one-dimensional guy or you're worried about that height and size, in my opinion, there's just so many other factors of his game and the attributes of his game that are good. He does better or almost as good as anyone else in the draft, makes him just a really impressive player for me. And Ross, I see first line upside with this guy. Like, I feel like if he ended up being a second/middle 6 guy, that would be on the lower end of where I would project him.
And not only does he put up points in bunches, he was also, according to Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, one of the top penalty killers in the WHL this past season. Not only defensively, but this guy's creating offense while shorthanded with his great rush ability. He had 6 more points than the next top player on the Spokane Chiefs, Connor Roulette. And then after that, there's a 45-point gap for the next player. This was his team, and it's unfortunate they got swept in the first round of the playoffs. He only had 4 playoff games, 4 assists, no goals, and his goaltenders had a tough time stopping the puck. But he has shown internationally that he can also play on stacked teams when everything's together. Obviously, he didn't get to go to the U18s this year, but when he was the captain at the U17s last year, 12 points in 7 games. So he's a guy he's an offensive weapon, can play well defensively. I mean, I like EP's shades of. They've got Troy Terry. I think if he ends up at the wing, he's more of a Troy Terry. They also have Logan Cooley. Maybe if he ends up at a center, I think he's probably a winger. I think so. And the industry chatter for EP, someone said he's not a center, and it doesn't matter. He's still top 10 talent. So I think that for me, he's going to grow to be a left winger at the NHL level, but one that if you want speed and if you want IQ, this is a player that you should consider drafting in the top 10. And if your team just did, Pilsy, what would you say they have to look forward to next year and in the years to come?
Well, he's such a dynamic player, Ross, especially if he stays with the Chiefs in the WHL. You got to hope they're going to bolster that lineup for him. So get him with some more dynamic players, especially on his line. I think 116 points might be low projection for him if you put a top line guy with him. I could spin zone it either way, Ross. If he goes to the wing, then you're saying, okay, this is a guy with his straight line speed. Even if defenders drive him wide, he's going to be able to get by them and then dipsy doodle back to the middle of the ice. So I could see that. But I actually would love if he could stay at center. I know the size is tough, but if he stays at center, then teams aren't going to be able to confine him to 1/3 of the ice as it goes east-west wise. Like if he stays at center, they're going to have no idea how he's going to be attacking that blue line, and he's going to get through with ease. So there's so many different things to like about Catton here, and I don't think it comes as too much of a surprise here, Ross. Berkly Catton is my second 5-star player here. If the Ottawa Senators decide, look, the crop of defensemen, the ones we had, like maybe Zeev Buium and Perek are the top 2 guys, and Lev Shunov, I think, is going to go to either Anaheim or Chicago. So leaving you with Dickinson, Yekemchuk, Silayev, those guys, and they're thinking, those aren't the top level defensemen we want. We want a forward, and Berkly Catton's there. I think that swing on Catton is going to be worth every penny when you give him the time to grow and develop a little more. So Berkly Catton at 7 for the Sens for me, I would be very, very happy with.
Yeah, you'd want to rush up to the stage and get Berkly Catton, then focus on a defenseman later on, either in 25 or 39, early second round. But if you have the upside of a Berkly Catton, and let's say Ginla's off the board, because to me, I've got a Ginla by just a hair ahead of him, just with the
Same.
late birthday, the untapped potential, and all that. The Ginla would be one spot ahead of me for Berkly Catton, but this guy is electrifying. And if your team just drafted him, you're going to see a lot of highlights on social media over the course of the next 2 years, 3 years, until he's an everyday player and a star, future star in the National Hockey League. 5 stars for you. That's where I was trying to get at there.
Yes, sir.
8.4 average rank. Berkly Catton comes in at 9 on our Locked On Senators NHL Draft rankings. For more profiles, go check us out on YouTube. All right. This would be a big swing on upside for Berkly Catton. Well, how about a swing on size? Anton Silayev is next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys already know that FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's because they're North America's #1 sportsbook. Go with the best with FanDuel. And in the summertime, you know what it is. It's NBA Finals. It's the Stanley Cup Finals. It's regular season baseball. It's golf. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. If you think the Edmonton Oilers' 8-1 beatdown of the Panthers was a sign of things to come, put your money where your mouth is. Or if you think the Panthers are just waiting to bring it back home to Florida so they can celebrate on home ice, you can go that way as well. Prop bets, parlays, over-unders, whatever you like, find it all on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right. A reminder, you can find the show on YouTube, Locked On Senators. We are also social media, Sens Central on Twitter. All right, coming in at number 8 on our Locked On Senators NHL Draft rankings, the tallest player in the draft, standing 6'7". It's Anton Silayev, playing in the KHL for Torpedo.
Yeah, Ross, anytime you have a guy with the size and the pro experience that Silayev has, it's very tempting to take a swing on that. And I think, obviously, when you see a player like Silayev, you're looking at it and you're saying 6'7", 207 pounds, defenseman, he's huge, pro experience. That's the things that pop out to you if you're just looking at the dimensions and counting numbers, which I guess I'll go through that now, Ross, before I get to this. In the KHL, he had 63 games, 3 goals, 8 assists, good for 11 points. And then in the KHL playoffs, in 5 games, he had 2 assists. And he finished off the year in the MHL playoffs, where in 10 games, he had 3 assists. So you start looking at this and you think, okay, this can be a really good shutdown, mean physical defenseman. But where Silayev really shines, Ross, is his skating. Now, you might think I'm setting this up to be like, at 6'7", he skates well for his size. Nuh-uh. Scratch the last part of that sentence. Silayev skates well in general. I mean, this guy flies out there, and EP, they gave him a lot of recognition here. They awarded him the best shutdown defenseman, so he is a shutdown guy, and neutral zone defender, second best straight line skater. So for a 6'7" guy, Ross, to be the second best straight line skater in this draft, that's pretty incredible. Third best four-way mobility. So he's not just one of those big guys that once he gets chugging, he's fast. This guy can move in all directions, kind of like your queen on a chessboard or king on a chessboard. They got all the mobility that you need. And fourth hardest hitter. A guy that size laying out hits like that. There's so much to like about Silayev when you start to look into his profile, and then you add on a full season of pro, and not even just pro, but KHL experience. Tempting prospect.
And not only that, earlier on in the season in the KHL, this 6'7", 211-pound defenseman was offensively putting up crazy numbers. It was just impossible to ignore when you saw in the first 4 games, he had 4 assists and then had a goal and an assist in his 6th game of the season. He was a point per game, had more than half of the points in his entire KHL season where he played 63 games. He had more than half of those points in the first 6 games. So throughout the second half of the season, scouts really hoped to see that continue, but instead, his offensive game went more underdeveloped, but at the expense of the offense, he really proved how solid he was on the back end. EP gives him on the 1 to 9 scale an 8 in physicality. They've got him as shades of Nikita Zadorov, who we know is a mutant in the NHL level. Now, here's the catch, because that's the real thing. What's the catch? This guy skates great. He's 6'7". He's physical. He's mean. He has the most points by a U18 KHLer since Vladimir Tarasenko and Evgeny Kuznetsov. You're like, what the heck's going on? He's putting up like only Alex Ovechkin's ahead of him for U18 scoring in some cases. Although I think that was the Super League. So it's a little different league officially, but he still played pro Russia. You get what I'm saying? The offense just disappeared after that. So despite being able to say he's in that echelon, I think what's most impressive and why he was able to even put up this many points, despite not running a power play or anything like that, is that he's playing more than 20 minutes a night in the playoffs for the Torpedo. Like, this is an unheard of prospect where he's that far matured. He's an April birthday. He's only turning 19 in April after this upcoming season. The other catch, Bills, is when the heck are we going to see him in North America, because he's still signed in the KHL. So we don't know when he's going to be able to get out of that contract, which according to EP, his current deal runs until the end of 2026.
Yeah, that's definitely tough. And I mean, it's not like he's a guy that's actively contributing to a top 4 in the KHL. He's not one of those prospects where they're just a big name and they want to shelter him. Torpedo's actually like, no, this is one of our big players. We need him. So that'll be hard to pry him out of there. Ross, you mentioned all those things that make him such a unique player. In EP's draft guide, I should go back and count it, but the amount of time scouts and their scouts, EP scouts, use the word unicorn, it was more than 10 times. Like, everyone's saying this is a unicorn type player. You don't find these guys that can skate this well and that have pro experience at this size like you do with Silayev here. So that we've mentioned only positive things right now, except other than the Russia factor, which could be viewed as a negative for sure. Here's where there's some concerns, Ross, and maybe, I guess red flags is fair. The hockey sense, the decision making, and the puck handling, there's some work to be done here. And even David St. Louis mentions he applauds how good of a skater Silayev is, but sometimes the routes that he decides to take aren't exactly the most efficient, and he gets lost out there and loses his coverage because he's not taking the best path to get somewhere, even though he is a good skater and that can make up for it. So it's tough too, Ross, when a lot of these knocks on this guy, you could look at it and be like, well, if he played a full season in the MHL, you wouldn't see the stick handling, the skating route decisions, and those types of things. You wouldn't see that as a glaring issue because he would be among lesser competition and he'd probably be dominating a step ahead of these guys anyway. So it's one thing to see it in the KHL and be concerned about it. But at the same time, you got to think he's so young. Once he gets a little more time to mature in a pro league rather than being a rookie defenseman, you're going to see a lot of these things improve over time.
He's one of the guys where if he goes early, he could have a tough time of living up to that draft slot.
Yep.
But if he goes at 10,
there
could be 8 teams that are like, what the heck did we pass on this guy? He's Victor Hedman. So I just think that he is the wild card of the top 10. Where Anton Silayev goes is going to throw the biggest wrench. I'm including Demidov because think about it. There's so many other good defensemen. If you're going to take a swing on him, you're passing on Zeev Buim. You're passing on Sam Dickinson, potentially. I mean, the earlier teams would if he does go that high. It's going to be fascinating, that tier of 6 defensemen. Silayev, Yakimchuk, Zeev Buyam, Artyom Levshunov, Sam Dickinson, and Zane Parekh. Those defensemen, order them however you'd like. None of them has the raw potential of Anton Silayev being 6'7" and skating the way he does. Nobody has that potential that they could be that physical of a force come playoff time. But also, there's not many that have the bust potential that Silayev does. If it just doesn't work out, he could potentially, I don't think it's the case, but you could see Craig Button 16th on his list. EP has him at 12, whereas Bob McKenzie has him at 3, which means NHL teams love him. Fascinating prospect. He's going to be around 9 or 10 for me, but I still think he's a heck of a prospect. And if he falls out of the top 10, it's a slam dunk pick. Once you hit 11, I think you have to start looking at Anton Silayev. What do you have for a Sens stars for Silayev?
Yeah, I think, Ross, especially you look at EP's scout chatter, a lot of scouts love him. Like, they're comparing him to Victor Hedman. Like, a lot of scouts are like, we'd be nuts to pass on this guy. Having said that, I got him at 4 out of 5 stars for the Sens. I get nervous about drafting big defensemen. If there wasn't the crop of other 5 guys that you mentioned, Ross, in this area for the Sens, I think maybe I would have him at least at a 4.5 stars out of 5. But I like those other guys so much more, and I like their floor a little bit more than Silayev's. But I feel like it's cliche. We say this a lot, but I do mean it here. If your team just drafted Silayev, you should get excited. Like, I think there's such potential here when you have a guy his size that skates this well. He could be a big deal. So although I don't think the Sens are the right pick for him, I do see the potential here. Ross, I put in my notes, I feel like a team that already has a safe, low upside, blue chip defensive prospect could take a swing on this guy. Like, if you already have a guy where you're like, we have a
think of him and Sanderson. Think of him and Sanderson. One of them's on the ice all game.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, I guess I was thinking more prospect. Sanderson, I've already graduated, but that's a fair point. Sandy's still really young. But that's where you could have a safety net if this doesn't work out. And then if it does, you're laughing. Like, I think, Ross, of Utah. Like, imagine they get Silayev and Simashev. Thank you. I was really high on him. 2 of the best skating Russian defensemen in their system. Oh my God.
Yeah, if the Sens take him at 7, I'm going to convince myself he was best player available, because the
I wouldn't hate it. Yeah,
all there, and he's right in that range. Yeah, I think if I'm looking at your list, right, you've got him at 10. I have him at 11 right now, and that could easily change before the draft. And you can find all of our draft profiles on YouTube. Locked On Senators. Anton Silayev comes in at 8 with an average rank of 8 on our Locked On Senators draft rankings. All right, Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
No final thoughts for me, Ross. Just waiting on some big news to happen. I'd like to get one more draft-related trade before the draft. I know we had the Chicago New York Islanders one, but
after the mock draft comes out next Saturday.
Yes, good call. After the mock. No, we'll do. How about a second round?
33rd overall.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll go for that then.
All right, that's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. Thanks so much for watching, listening, engaging to another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.